Today on Policy Focus, we shall be looking at some salient issues embedded in the 2024 budget. It is undoubtedly true that mixed reactions have trailed the signing into law of the fiscal year budget, themed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as Budget of Renewed Hope. The budget, being the first for the incumbent government, is widely refuted to being the biggest ever in terms of monetary value, the volume of money involved in the history of Nigerian nationhood. The appropriation has an expenditure of 28.7 trillion naira and an estimated revenue of 18.32 trillion, with a breakdown of 9.99 trillion naira. That is 35% for capital expenditure, 8.77 trillion naira, that is 30% for recurrent expenditure, 1.74 trillion naira for statutory transfers, that's about 6%, and 2.87 trillion naira, that's 29% for debt servicing. Many are of the opinion that the appropriation is elite-minded, taking into consideration what was budgeted for the National Assembly and Aso Rock. On the other hand, many financial experts, political economists, and public affairs analysts who have closely scrutinized and evaluated the budget maintain that the 2024 budget is masses-friendly, owing to how it focuses on achieving defense and internal security, job creation, macroeconomic stability, improved investment environment, human capital development, poverty reduction, and social security, all in a bid to salvage Nigeria from social morass, security, and economic nosediving. Now, does the 2024 budget have positive implications on Nigeria and Nigerians in line with the renewed hope mantra of the president? Our focus today is on the answers Nigerians seek as they grapple with this question while anticipating the implementation of the budget. I am Lydia Odijochi. We're glad to have you join us. See you in a moment. Welcome back, and thanks for staying. The 2024 budget was welcomed by Nigerians with optimism, nursing the expectations that the renewed hope budget will revamp the economy and cure our security ills for a better Nigeria. Since the passage of the budget, concerned Nigerians have been asking questions regarding its logical implementation and its general implications on the common man. I have with me a seasoned public affairs analyst, Jide Ojo. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Lydia.
Yes. Now, having critically scrutinized the 2024 renewed hope budget generally, what implications do you feel it will have on Nigerians at the wake of the present insecurity and economic hardship?
Well, the president signed the budget on the 1st of January, and we are all very hopeful that the huge sums of money earmarked for defense and security will be released on time to make the needed procurement and payment of allowances of military and police personnel so that they can up their ante. It's heartwarming that the defense and security spending is still number one in Nigeria. Even though the managers of our security claims that they still have insufficient funding, but we know government is doing its level best. Aside from budgetary allocation, there is still police equipment trust fund that is also mobilizing resources for the Nigerian police. There's also about 7 states that have passed security trust fund, like Lagos, Delta, Ekiti, and a couple of other states have what they call state, either police or security trust fund. So they are able to equally provide some extra budgetary spending for Nigerian police and military. But issue of security is a collective responsibility. And it's a cross-cutting issue that we must not lose sight of the fact that even in terms of agriculture, what happens with physical security affects agriculture practice, cultivation, animal husbandry. It cuts across the issue of farmers clashes. So it's not everything that can be solved through military operations. There are still issues that have to do with dialogue, mediation, and remediation. So it's a complex issue, but at least budget-wise, the good news is that we are back to President Tinubu is able to maintain the January to December financial year. And it is believed that, given the fact that security and defense has the highest budgetary allocation, that there will be quick release of funds to do the needful.
Okay, now, Jideojo, with the global economic headwinds and Nigeria's fiscal constraints, at what percentage would you describe the feasibility of the 2024 budget?
The feasibility lies in the fact that first we should know that the National Assembly decided to increase the budget from 27.5 trillion to 28 trillion. And given the headwinds that you alluded to, the biggest challenge with our budget is funding. We have, after the hiking of the total sum to 28%, 28 trillion, federal government will need to borrow over 10 trillion out of that sum to be able to fund appropriately the different sectors of the economy. And that is the major worry. Because even at this 28 trillion, we have not talked about the proposed living wage that the president promised on several occasions that he's going to pay workers. There is not allocation for that yet. So even if the consultative committee is set up and they discuss and they agree and the National Assembly passes the bill and the president signs, there will still be the need for supplementary budget to be able to pay this wage. So that in itself is a challenge. How do you fund the budget? Don't forget we have over 1,000 ministries, departments, and agencies. And Lydia, as we speak, about 98% of our revenue is spent on budget servicing, the servicing of the budget. It used to be 3 trillion, 5 trillion. Now we have budget servicing envelope of over 7 trillion. That is almost at par with our capital expenditure framework. And that is very disheartening. When you talk about debt servicing, you have not paid the principal sum. You are still servicing. Is the interest on what you borrowed that you are paying. So what we need to do is to considerably think about cutting down the cost of governance. And this is the issue I weighed in my column in The Punch last week, where I suggested different ways by which we can reduce cost of governance, because with the situations as it is, that we have to service our debt with close to 8 trillion and then spend over 90% of our revenue to do this. So where do you have money? How will you have money to run the economy when 90% plus or almost 100% of your revenue is spent on debt servicing? And unfortunately, on top of this, we've not been able to block the revenue leakages in government-owned enterprises. Oil theft is still plaguing the country. Very considerable oil theft is still taking place despite the multi-billion contract to private individual, or what we call non-state actor, to help us with the surveillance. There is still a lot of pilfering going on. And then corruption. Corruption still remains a very big debacle on good governance in Nigeria. So the more you look at this, the more challenging it is on how to really implement our national and indeed state budgets.
Okay, now talking about budget implementation, it is principally based on the revenue the government can raise. But with the net oil revenue falling on average in the last 3 years, what do you think are the possibilities of the federal government implementing the 2024 budget?
Unless we are able to reduce the number of ministries, departments, and agencies, and considerably cut down on the cost of governance, we will just be having budget as a holy ritual. You recall that over the decades, many a time, there's below 50% budget implementation, particularly for capital expenditure. The ones that are usually fully implemented is the recurrent and the overhead and the debt servicing. So when it comes to funding the infrastructural deficit, you are looking for money. And that's what takes us back to the issue of borrowing, excessive borrowing. As I earlier alluded to, the federal government intends to borrow over 10 trillion to fund 2024 budget. Where are they going to get this 10 trillion? From bilateral and multilateral organizations, the Exim Bank of China, from domestic money deposit banks, from bonds, from securities and all of these things, that treasury bills and all of that. But when you look at it, that as we borrow more, so is our debt servicing portfolio increasing. It then means that unless we put a stop to borrowing and diversify the economy and look at ways of getting more funds to run the economy, we will just be living in delusion. What I have said we need to do is to have a restructured country. You cannot, in good conscience, keep over 1,000 ministries, departments, and agencies that are practically doing nothing. and you think you want to reduce cost of governance. When the president said he's reducing his cost of travel by 60%, I was one of those who lauded him. But is it going to be far-reaching? The answer is no. Look at the corruption allegation in Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Multi-billion naira corruption allegedly going on over the years. How can a country develop like this? And there was a shocking revelation by the new chairman of EFCC that some of his staff are also corrupt and that he will deal with them. These are people we are relying on to help us curb corruption. And they themselves are deeply involved in corrupt practices. And I keep saying there is a lot of revenue leakages. You have what is called government-owned enterprises who will help government to collect revenue, but will fail to remit to the coffers of government. It was when Professor Ishakoloye got into JAM that he started to remit billions of naira into government treasury. There have been executive secretary, registrar before him. What were they doing? They were just sharing the largesse. After paying invigilator, paying for printing of exam questions, and those who said the questions, the next thing, they share the money. Remember the person who was there before, Professor Isha Koloyede, is answering for corruption allegation, Professor Dibo Jeridi. Is still being dragged all over many. And that's what I'm saying. In many of the government-owned enterprises that are revenue-generating agencies, they hardly remit the actual amount that is expected of them to be remitted. So they pocket the bulk of whatever they collect and just remit a paltry sum into the coffers of government. How did it happen that our former Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, was able to pilfer over 100 billion from government treasury? He is still in court being dragged over 109 billion corruption allegation, himself and 2 or 3 other people. How did that happen? And you and I are saying we don't have money to run budgets. So if we don't block all of these leakages, if people are helping themselves to public funds and are getting away with it, then you will not have money to run government. So what needs to be done is multivarious. We need to reduce cost of governance. We need to curb corruption. We need to do several other things, as I've highlighted.
Thank you very much. Now, over the years, Nigeria depended mostly on oil and customs revenue and value-added tax to finance her budget. Now, with the present economic realities of the country, can you describe our revenue projection of 2024 to be underestimated or overestimated?
It's very difficult to say whether it's underestimated or overestimated. You see, when you project, revenue projection is, as we say in economics, ceteris paribus, all things being equal. We know that all things will never be equal. Lydia, you know, in 2020, when they were doing the budget for 2020 and 2019, nobody saw COVID-19. Nobody knew we are going to battle COVID-19 for 2021, 2020, 2021. And you could see that Buhari have to sponsor another amendment to that 2020 budget to reduce the amount because the economy had to shut down, industries have to shut down. Ironically, look at what has happened. If you follow what's happening in the National Assembly, there's a committee on public accounts that's asking many of the MGA leadership to refund billions of naira, which they have misappropriated. And these are COVID-19 funds that many of them could not account for how they spent it. There is an agency they said should return 57 billion into government accounts for under 7 days. So it's also part of our problem that people are not being truthful, they are not honest, they are not patriotic, and we engage in all manner of malfeasance and stealing of public resources. So when you project revenue, you are projecting on the basis of all things being equal. Last year, we didn't see the coup in Niger Republic. But when that coup happened, Nigeria had to slam economic sanctions on Niger Republic, one of which is to close the border with Niger Republic. Aside from closing the border, we also stopped the electricity supply to Niger Republic. Now, the revenue that we expected to get from, trading activities between Nigeria and Niger Republic cannot, it's no longer realistic. So there are political, there are economic, there are social reasons where certain things could not happen. Look at the issue of even insecurity that is prevalent, from which we started this discussion. Do you know the economic loss that insecurity has brought about across the country? Many people have fled their ancestral homes. Many people are no longer applying their trade. So many people have left farms and ran to city centers. And so the economic activities is already disrupted and dislocated. And that is it's not only farming, it's not only agri, even trading, other businesses have been hampered. And when somebody works, he has income and is able to take care of his household, he's also able to pay tax to the coffers of government, whether it's value-added tax, whether it's personal income tax, whether it's company tax. All this revenue, we are losing it by, act of insecurity. Not only that, look at the number of pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical companies that have divested from Nigeria. The GlaxoSmithKline of this world and several others. Now, these are companies that have hundreds or thousands of staff in their employment. And aside from paying staff salary, they also pay taxes to the coffers of government. Now that they have closed their businesses in Nigeria, the revenue that should accrue to the coffers of Nigerian government or state government is not going to be achievable. So there are a number of factors that usually will make certain forecast or projection of revenue to work or not to work. Some of them are just highlighted.
Yes, definitely. Now, let's go to another aspect now. Recently, Nigeria was accorded the awful, I would describe it as awful, distinction of being the poverty capital of the world, coming from the World Poverty Clock of 2023. 71 million people are said to live in extreme poverty in Nigeria today. And according to the National Bureau of Statistics, in July 2023, a total of 133 million people are classified as multidimensionally poor in Nigeria. Now, do you think the 2024 budget has the potential to change this narrative?
I hope so, but I don't believe so. There's something between hoping and believing. How do you move people from poverty to prosperity in a situation that we have described earlier on, where there's high prevalence of corruption? The people you want to remove from poverty are stealing your funds. Look at the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. Remember, the federal government said it will pay 15 million people 25,000 naira for 3 months.
35,000 naira.
25,000 naira for 15 million households for 3 months. That's October, November, December. But look at what has happened to Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, where we learned somebody moved 44 billion out of the funds of National Social Investment Program in 4 days. Another is embroiled in 37.1 billion fraudulent allegations. That's the former minister. We also have the new minister, Bete Edu, facing corruption allegation of 585 million and other sundry allegations. So this is humanitarian ministry and poverty alleviation. Listen very well. That is humanitarian ministry and poverty alleviation. How can you alleviate poverty when you are stealing the people blind? The conditional cash transfer is opaque. They allegedly spent 3 billion naira to build social register in 1 month. 3 billion. You want to build social register. And multi-million naira consultancy fee was just forked out to cronies. 3 billion. So how do you want to lift people out of poverty? And how much are you going to pay these people? 25,000. But you have helped yourself to 44 billion, 37.1 billion, another, and so how that's why I said I hope. But in truth, the situation on ground is not inspiring. Because to move people out of poverty, you need to make conscious efforts to improve the economic climate. Now, look at the removal of fuel subsidy. Do you know that there is a report or research output that says about 10 million people have fallen into poverty between May 29 and now because of the rising cost of living? So you remove fuel subsidy, the price of PMS, which is petrol, moved from 170, 200 naira to 670 naira. So look at food inflation. How many people can eat 2 meals or 3 meals? Everybody is just gasping for breath. Even me seated there talking to you, I know how my life has been impacted negatively. Many children are dropping out of schools because their parents can no longer sustain them. Many people who learn a particular trade cannot apply those trades because of the rising cost of living. So you see a lot of people, the quickest way they earn income now is to join the Okada club, commercial cycling. And how much can they make from commercial cycling? You are not the only one doing it. There are hundreds of you. So at the end of the day, after the money for repairs, money for fuel, you only will go on with 3,000 naira. And God help you if you have a family of 5 or 7. So how will you feed them? Are you not going to pay rent? Are you not going to pay electricity bill? Are you not going to pay security fee? So I do not believe that we are on the pathway to exiting this poverty capital of the world. Not so fast, not under what I'm saying. The compressed natural gas buses that the president promised us since last August has not been fulfilled. This is about the 6th or 7th month. One single compressed natural gas buses is not on the road. And yet we are told, if we are able to deal with that, they will buy 3,000 CNG buses, and so that they will be able to reduce cost of transportation. But not one is on the road as we speak. So even electricity cars, electric power cars and buses, none of them is on the road. And so when you look at the rising cost of living, the cost of rent, the cost of food, the cost of accommodation, the cost of even education, health, look at how much people are paying for school fees before Tinubu assumed office, and how much they are paying as we speak. So rather than having higher standard of living, we are having high cost of living. And even the so-called middle class, many members of that class are dropping to the poverty level. So a lot still needs to be done if we want to turn things around. Okay. That's why I wrote in my column in the Punch about the excitement I have about the commencement of operations of Dangote Refinery, hoping that it will be a game changer and we'll be able to have steady supply. We'll eventually have reduction in the cost price of a liter of fuel. And that will also reduce the cost of doing business. Because right now, there is something called ease of doing business. You cannot, assuming you are not a government worker, go and get a shop at any of the markets and look at how much you have to pay for rent. You still have to pay security. You still have to pay for waste disposal. You still have to pay for water. You still have to pay for electricity. So your profit margin is reduced considerably. And many of those market men and women are living on credit. Credit facility from microfinance companies, from cooperative societies and all of that. So people are just resilient. That's why you still see us when we put powder on our faces, we still look like we are enjoying. But people are suffering and they are smiling. Like Fela Anikulapo said in his one of his songs, suffering and smiling.
It's new, it's fresh, it's all about policies and strategies. Watch out for NIPSS Policy TV programs on NTA News 24. Tune in on Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on DSTV Channel 419, GoTV Channel 26, Star Times Channels 101 and 433, and Free TV Channel 703. Miss this and miss out on policies that will affect you and our country. Join us.
Nigeria.
Okay. Depend on how the government will manage the funds or the policies of the country. And I believe they increase it very hard by what they say for the betterment of the citizens. So I think if it will be judiciously used, the citizen will actually benefit from it. Though maybe not as expected, but it will to some certain extent the current hardship.
History. Judging by our antecedents, you know that our budgets have never had any significant impact on the livelihood of Nigerians. Let me explain. for last year, the budget was like 20 something trillion, not up to this one, right? Are we together? Now, what is the impact? What is the impact on the generality of Nigerians? People are still wallowing in abject poverty. Some people find it even difficult to eat 1 square meal if one is a square, right? And then we find out that the inflation has gone up. They tell us it's 29 point something percent. But you and I know it's more than 35%. And then, of course, if you go to the market to buy something, the money for 500 naira, you go in the evening, it's 1,000. It's hyperinflation. People can no longer meet up with their needs. Cases of suicides here and there. So I don't think the budget, to my mind, has had a positive impact on the livelihood of Nigerians. However, I will not condemn this government because they are coming in newly. They are barely 7-8 months in power. Let's give them the benefit of doubt if they are going to do things differently. How? Of course, we have seen in the past regime or the past government whereby these ministers have been accused severally of indolence, of mismanagement of funds and resources. And then the attention of the president is gone. Nothing is done, right? But this one, at least, we can begin to have a semblance of maybe something might be done. We only hope it will be taken to the latter whereby someone is prosecuted and if found wanting, jailed. Let it not be business as usual whereby we raise dust, the hula baloo of saying that things, we've seen this, we've seen that, we've seen this person have amassed so much, this person has embezzled so much. But at the end of the day, nothing to show for it. We hope it's not going to be a charade at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for that insight.
You're
So
welcome.
my next question is how has advertising helped like the growth of the economy? How has it contributed to the growth of our economy?
Well, advertisement, to my mind, has helped. There are hitherto many products that some people don't even know about. Even if they know, some people, it might not be what they really want to buy or acquire, as the case may be. But advertisement has helped tremendously in bringing the awareness and consciousness of people to fore or to bear, so that things that you ordinarily don't know, with advertisement or through advertising, you get to know them. New product.
Okay. 2024 budget this is the largest we have seen in some recent times, and personally, I think the value is about 27 to 28 trillion naira, which I believe it is just large because due to the fact of inflation. And I've come across some projects of some ministries, departments, and some agencies, which I believe some of them are new capital projects, while some are old projects that are ongoing. So for me personally, I think the budget is just large due to the numerical value due to inflation, and just to be optimistic, we hope it will transform into the lives of Nigerians and make the lives of Nigerians better.
Keep watching.
Keep watching NIPSS Policy TV.
everything in life has a price tag. People should be conscious of whatever they do, it has consequences, either for good or for bad. So people should not assume.
Today, our guest on Alumni Chat is a very special person. First of all, she's a woman, a beautiful, hardworking one at that. She's someone we all admire here at the National Institute. I'm talking about Professor Funmi Paramalam, Director of Studies. Thank you for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
And we appreciate that you found time, despite your busy schedule, to have this interview with us. Thank you so much. Now, Professor, tell us, what was your experience when you were here at the Institute as a participant?
Wow, that's a long time ago. So I was a participant on SEC 35, 2013, 10 years ago precisely. It was a very enriching experience. I came out of that experience thinking that, wow, it was so intense and probably almost more intense than my PhD because that spanned over, 3 years. It was a very, very intensive course. It was rewarding, but stretching. It helped in so many ways to expose me to a deeper knowledge about the nation, the issues, critical issues of national import, but also to network with a whole variety of colleagues and friends and acquaintances across different, divides.
How has the experience imparted in your life as a person and in your career?
Being an MNI has its own perks, and one of them is that it opens opportunities for you in terms of being considered even for appointments. So I believe that even this particular office that I hold, being an MNI stood me in good stead or in better stead to be considered for the role. And then, like I was talking earlier about the network of colleagues and acquaintances that you come across, that helps you to be able to tap into a huge human resource. And even as Director of Studies, I have been able to reach out and tap into that resource, bring in some of the alumni here to deliver lectures, to participate in seminars. Just recently, we had the Distinguished Alumni Lecture Series, and this year's was delivered by Engineer Mohammed Gambo, MNI. And it was just, he came here for a visit just to call on us, and listening to him, I realized that what he had done, what he was doing, aligned with our theme for the year. So I said, oh, you should be our Distinguished Alumni Lecturer this year. And that's, how that happened. So, being able to tap into that network of people has been very helpful. And then, the standard to which we are held, the motto of Annie is towards a better society. So I believe that's always at the back of one's mind, that as a member of the National Institute, you are constantly supposed to be working, wherever you are placed, towards a better society. And that helps, that gives you that kind of additional push, that understanding that you are supposed to be making things better wherever you are.
Now, Professor, what is your philosophy of life?
I would say, for me, the basic philosophy of life that I know I hold on a daily basis is that whatever we are doing here on earth is for a purpose. And in fact, I will call it a divine purpose. I believe I'm called by God, created and called by God to pay my own quota to making humanity better. So I live to worship. And like Dora Akunyili said, to work is to worship. Worship takes different types of forms. Just knowing, having a sense of purpose, that I'm created for purpose. I'm created for destiny. I'm not here by accident. and everything that concerns my life is orchestrated and ordained by that divine purpose. So my philosophy in life is do your best. Whatever your hands find to do it with all your heart. Do it to the best of your ability. Not because somebody is watching, not because there's somebody is going to pat you on the back or give you a reward, but because you know you are working for a higher purpose.
What would be your reaction about the narrative that the alumni is an elitist group?
There's nothing wrong with being elitist. An elite has their purpose in society. Very often, change and transformation are driven by the elite. It is only when the elite do not understand that their position is a sacred trust that you now have, that it becomes a problem. If the elite are alive to their responsibility, that being an elite is only an opportunity to serve, only an opportunity to raise up the rest of humanity. Every position is only an opportunity, and God will ask us what we have done with it. So if people are saying that Annie is elitist, to me it's not a bad label to be elitist, except if elitist now becomes exclusive, discriminatory, and unconcerned about the rest. Then when it is that, then it's a problem. Then it is a problem. And I do concede that to some extent there could be some of that, but that's not the whole story. It's not the whole story.
How impactful has the association been to the Institute?
Okay, in terms of the impact of Annie on the National Institute, well, I would say it's a mixed bag, in the sense that there has been some impact in terms of Annie recognizing that NIPSS is the alma mater and coming back to have the AGM and the annual general meetings, and now that the Director General of the National Institute, when he came in 2022, he instituted the Distinguished Alumni Lecture Series, and that has been a really good platform for getting people to come and give back to their alma mater. And we've had some of our, in fact, quite a number of our alumni coming back to give lectures. Some even at their own expense coming to meet with participants. We had that especially year before last, and last year. That really helps. And I would also say showing an interest in the National Institute, what's happening there, wanted to make sure that the standards are still being kept high. Annie is very committed to ensuring that NIPSS doesn't derail from its mandate, so that's good. But I said it's a mixed bag because the impact could be much more if, for example, when people are in session, when they're on course, they always have what we call legacy projects. And these are very nice legacy projects. For example, Sec 45 is building a training center for the Directorate of Studies. We also have, last year, Sec 44 built a primary school, and year before then, Sec 43 built a whole set of offices for directing staff. So we've had some very, very groundbreaking projects, legacy projects. But then when they're gone, they're gone. And so sometimes not looking back to keep tabs on those projects, how are they faring? Is there any scaling up? Is there any, whatever that needs to be done, just to even show an interest? Like you have endowments abroad where alumni come and they are constantly trying to see how they can feed back into the alma mater to improve through these endowments. And so I think we need an alumni endowment, or the alumni participate in the NIPSS endowment much more closely. I think that would be really, really useful. And I also think that the senior executive course participants could benefit a whole lot more from mentoring from people who have passed out, of the course. So maybe we need to set up maybe a better system, for that to happen. But we have the alumni platform now that was established. Professor Adeyanju, MNI, is also in charge of that. And I think that's going to be a veritable platform for further cementing the relationship between the alumni and the National Institute.
What would you recommend for the Institute to get better?
There are a number of things. Let me say this before I recommend. People that come from the outside to NIPSS, they recognize that NIPSS is in a class of its own in many respects. In many respects. I've worked here for, next year will be 35 years. And it's a place where I feel privileged to have spent my career life. And I've seen progress over time. The NIPSS of today is not the NIPSS I met in 1989 when I came to work here. So I have seen incremental changes for good. But there's still a lot that could be done. And I think one of those is making sure that our act, the enabling act of NIPSS, it has never been changed since the beginning. The enabling act of NIPSS has to be reviewed and made to meet with contemporary current challenges so that the National Institute can really fulfill its mandate at a cutting edge level. So for instance, the ability to attract, and this comes also to the conditions of service. The NIPSS conditions of service needs a major overhaul. And that is in the works, but it's slow in coming. Because a place like the National Institute needs to be able to attract the best. Not just attract, but retain the best. The best brains, the best skilled personnel, we should have the best. If we're going to be the kind of place that keys in, produces knowledge, produces policy advancements for the nation, then we should really have the best. And the conditions of service needs a major overhaul. The next thing is we need to standardize in our operational procedures. So there are certain things that we could do better to build a culture, a community of practice that really does reflect expertise, both in terms of the way we maintain our environment, making sure that the entire environment is properly maintained, whether it is the buildings or the grounds or whatever. I think we need to take it a notch higher in that respect. And then the kind of participants that we admit in the National Institute, I think there needs to be a greater collaboration between the National Institute and the presidency and nominating bodies to ensure that the caliber of people that come here is kept at a very, very high level. And we don't have people sent here who are being punished or who just people want them out of the system or because they know somebody. We really want to make sure that the caliber of people that come here are people that when they go back into society, there's a marked impact and improvement.
Thank you, Professor Fumi Paramalam, for finding time to talk with us. It's really been an interesting chat. Thank you so much. We're grateful for sharing your insight and your thoughts with us. Thank you indeed.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you the best with this Policy TV. So happy for this initiative that the DG has brought on board. It's an idea whose time has come.
And that's our chat today. We hope you had a nice time watching that. The program continues. Don't go away. A budget is a vital tool for achieving a country's economic strategy. It is designed to shape its entire socio-economic landscape for the year and the future, with the budget allocation serving as a guide for the government's long-term economic vision. Budget is very crucial in every governance with 4 distinct phases, with the implementation stage as the most critical part of the process. The 2024 budget has passed the preparation and authorization stages. Nigerians are now closely monitoring the implementation stage to have a national turnaround. This is what every Nigerian looks forward to with hope for a better Nigeria. That's it on the program today, and thank you for being part of it. See you next time. I am Lydia Odidiochi. Goodbye.